and we will launch right into this. It's going to be fast and furious. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff in a little bit of time. And please, throw questions and comments out into the chat because we will answer those. We've got somebody watching what's going on in the chat, so we can make sure that we don't miss a thing. And I am stumbling and fumbling because I had preloaded my PowerPoint slides and they are not showing up. Isn't that great how that works? Give me just a second. I will do this.
And while Dallas is doing that, he mentioned it, but we have already uploaded his slides to the CPSI webpage, and we are recording this event. So in a week or so, we'll have this recording up as well.
All right. Got it. Here we go. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Military credit for prior learning. The ACE military guide, I'm going to refer to it as the AMG from here on out. Being a military guy, it's all about acronyms, but they could really do a better job at their acronyms. They need to, being an Air Force guy, we try to make it into words. And then the Joint Services transcript and how that operates. So let's talk about credit for prior learning first. Credit for prior learning is a huge umbrella of different things. It includes training, all these different words that you see on the screen, but it also is overarching for PLA, prior learning assessment. So CALE, I'm very involved with CALE, Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, came out a few years ago and said, hey, we've been using the acronym PLA, but that really doesn't fit because prior learning assessment is actually an element of credit for prior learning. So it is a subset. So we've moved to the word of CPL. I tend to like what they're doing up in Canada, where they're using RPLA, which is a way to review prior learning assessment. But for us, we're going to use this pretty heavily today. We're focusing in on military credit for prior learning and how we can use this within our system. The agenda is pretty quick. It's easy. We're going to fly through this stuff faster than you think, but it looks like a lot. We'll go over it, and as you have questions, please feel free to jump in there and talk about it. So here's some of the challenges that I see over the last couple of years with credit for prior learning on the military side. We are challenged to have a culture of military-centric communities within our campuses. We enjoy having our service members there and them participating in our classes, but it really boils down to that concept of being military friendly. We're glad you're here, but that's about as far as we go. We don't know much more about it. So recognizing credit for prior learning helps us to get better. We go from just being military friendly to being military ready by saying, you know what, we've looked at your military career field and we can determine that there are some things that apply to your degree program and how we can accelerate that. And this is where we're changing the challenge that we have of higher education language, because in the military, they train to mission. They have a mission they have to complete and they train to that. In higher education, we train or teach to learning outcomes. And we need to bring those two together so that it makes more sense. And then, of course, the transferability of learning from the workplace, from a non-accredited institution, the military, into our regionally and nationally accredited organizations that are focused on learning. Now, those are the challenges. And I've got the slide of Jim Cramer up here. I really like what he had to say some time back. He talked about the fact that corporate America needs to recognize that hiring veterans is such an important part of their business because of the training that they bring to the table. But it's much more than that. And I think Cramer missed the opportunity to talk about how we in higher education can partner with our military members to help them do that transition from the military sector into the civilian sector through education to help them gain great jobs and have their military training and work experience or learning, experiential learning, be meaningful in the workplace. So That's one huge part of it. The other thing we need to understand, the opportunities here, is military training is well documented. So it's easy for us, if we know where to go find it, to be able to capture it and then move forward as an institution. It will open up a lot of opportunities. Here in Indiana, for example, there are over 400,000 veterans. 400,000. Okay. Now, let's back some numbers out of that 400,000. There's a large percentage of them that are over age 55 that might not be part of our potential student population. It's about 50% of them, but that still leaves about 200,000 between the ages of 22 and 55 that are potential students. Now, if you only got 1% of that amount, that's 2,000 new students in the state. It's pretty significant. Military students will go to schools that recognize their learning because adult learners go to schools that recognize their learning outside of um, academia. This is a place to start building your capacity at your institution to recognize military CPL, but more importantly, to see how you can translate that to the civilian sector and how you can attract those folks that are in businesses having great learning experiences and then recognizing and applying it as credit for prior learning. There are a lot of support organizations for the military to help make these things happen. As I mentioned, the military is very much about training to mission, but they also realized that not you don't stay in the military forever. You get out. Not everyone will stay 20 years and earn retirement and then go sit on the porch. Most of us, even if we earn a retirement, will still go work somewhere, do something. And that's where the DoD Cool program came around, because what they do is credentialing opportunities online is what Cool stands for. It helps our service members to get the credentials in the civilian sector that they need for good employment. Well, when they get those credentials, it helps us in academia to translate that over. For example, if you are an aircraft mechanic in the military, the civilian A&P license is not that important to you because you don't need it to work on military aircraft. But when you transfer to the civilian sector, if you want to get a job in aviation, that A&P license, airframe and power plant, that's what that stands for. That certification means tremendous opportunities for our service members. Additionally, the American Council on Education has recognized it as up to 27 credit hours in an aviation management program. 27 credit hours that can be applied to accelerate degree completion. That's pretty amazing. So we partner that with employers who want to have a educated workforce. We can get them through their associate degree by completing the gen ed requirements and move them into a bachelor's degree very quickly. So all of these things work together to help us. Education and training aspects are rampant in the military, and it is very vocational, but there are also leadership and management trainings that go on that we want to capitalize on. And the GI Bill is our primary way that we capitalize on this. And we do that through service members as they're coming out of the military, use the GI Bill to complete their degree. But we can also capture part of their attention while they're still in the military and not touch that GI Bill money, to where we can use it to, it's called tuition assistance. The active duty has that, and the Guard has a program that will allow the military to pay for courses that are related to their military career field, and they don't have to touch their GI Bill, which then in turn allows the service member to pass their GI Bill to their family members. For example, my wife, she went to nursing school, and I had already completed all my academic events that I ever planned to do, and I had money left over. So I moved it over to her, and it paid for her to go to nursing school, which was a great benefit. So the GI Bill becomes a reinforcer of education, not only for the service member, but for their families. A little bit of interesting points. This idea of military credit for prior learning: 92% of schools offer CPL in one way, shape, or another. But on the military side, only 70% are accepting training. And of that 70%, of those schools that are doing the 92% that are using some type of CPL, 70% accept the military training. That's just like a course that we might attend at our college, but only 53% are recognizing the military workplace learning. And we're going to dice that out a little bit more so that way you can see that. If you want these slides, I do reference at the bottom of my slides where you can go and find them online. All right, let's get down to the meat of it. This is why you're here, all right? The JST and the ACE military guide. Most of us see the JST. I'm going to show you some examples of some, and then we're going to talk about how you can use the guide to further extract more information to help you and your staff and your faculty to make good decisions about credit recommendations. So let's jump in to the JST. The Joint Service Transcript is a product that the service member gets and can share with our colleges and universities online so that we can quickly see what kind of credit recommendations the American Council had made for them. Now, you'll hear me refer to them as the American Council on Education, ACE. A lot of people call them ACE, which is okay, but once upon a time, we had a leader who talked about at ACE, talked about it and said, we're at the American Council on Education, ACE. We're not ACE because ACE is the place of the helpful hardware man. I would like to think we're the place of the helpful education man, but it doesn't flow nearly as well. The Joint Service Transcript, getting back to the task at hand. This document is generated for every service member other than the Air Force. The Air Force uses the Community College of the Air Force. We can take that credit in just as if we were accepting it from a other academic institution because they are regionally accredited by SACS. The JST is generated by the ACE evaluations, right? The way things get on this document is as individuals take training, they serve in the military, it goes into the personnel system. The personnel system then generates the Joint Service Transcript. So as service members complete training, it goes onto this document. As they move up in rank, it identifies that they've moved up a level in their workplace learning. It's divided into three different parts: the military courses, the military experience, which when you see that military experience, think of it this way, that's really military experiential learning. Because in the world of CPL, we don't recognize experience, we recognize experiential learning. The difference is you can have the same experience day after day after day and not learn anything. But experiential learning is where we look at things like the Kolb's cycle of experiential learning. And we have those experiences that lead to a reflection that we then come up with new concepts and ways that we can do things. And we spiral up to a new opportunity to actively experiment with what we've learned to have a new concrete experience and then move on. So experiential learning is a not just a cycle, but it's a 3D event, a spiral that goes up as we learn more and more and more. The last part of the JST, out of the three parts that I like to talk about, is the other learning. And there are a couple different things that will be reflected in there, but it's still other learning. Now, let's take a look at the JST itself. Very quickly, you can figure out which branch somebody's in because there are two seals on there. One is the American Council on Education, which is on the right-hand side when you're looking at it. And on the left-hand side is the seal from the branch they're in. And the one we're looking at right now is someone who is in the Department of Army. We're going to also look at a Navy one. We'll see a Marine Corps stuff, and we'll learn more about that. The first section, this is an unofficial transcript, which a service member can pull down anytime. When they send you the official transcript to your registrar, to your academic advisors, it will have their social security number, but it also includes what their rank was when they generated this document. On this particular one, we're looking at their initial training, what they got for basic training, and then they attended another course called the Adjutant General Officer Basic Course. That allows them to understand some of the business communication that needs to go on within the military community. And yes, it is business communication. Here, diving more into the military courses, is an example of a Navy JST. And on here, it lists not only what their rank was, but their title, the Chief of Intelligence or a Chief Intelligence Specialist. In the military, we have different career fields. You move through those career fields, you go up through there. The Army uses a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and there are some 60 level folks to progress through that. The initial is a 10 level. For the Air Force, they call them a 3 level because they've completed their initial training. And that initial training is typically in a classroom. So you'll see that listed on here. And for our um, intel specialist, at one point, they were involved in being on a submarine. So they get some initial training related to being in a submarine. Now, as you look at the JST, a couple points that I would like to make for you. First of all, you saw basic training. The second bullet after basic training is that basic enlisted Navy course that they took in New London, Groton, Connecticut. It tells you where the training was done. It also tells you what the time frame was that the person attended this training, and it gives you the ACE identifier, and then a very brief overview of what that training was. When they attend these courses, it's just like any other college course that we might have or training course. They have an instructor who's been pre-qualified. They have lecture material. They have assessments. And those things are all evaluated by the American Council on Education to determine if there is a college equivalent learning that can be awarded credit. Now, one of the other things that goes on with ACE, if there is no assessment of learning, then there is no credit recommendation made. That's one thing to keep in mind. They have been assessed. We're looking for multiple choice tests. We're looking for written essays. We're looking for any number of assessment methods to include demonstration, interviews, and such like that. This training that they do can also include leadership, professional development, and special duties. For example, one special duty in the Army is an Army recruiter. And they have to go to a very in-depth school where they will be exposed to interpersonal communication, sales and marketing techniques, and retail. And ACE has evaluated that credit. That's how we do the course side. Now, on the military experience side, you see it's listed there at the very top of this page of the JST that you're looking at. It talks about the learning that goes on while they're out on the job, the OJT, based on their career and connected to their current duty assignment. And the way that ACE identifies this credit is we hold an interview board for individuals that are at a certain rank and level of experience in the workplace. And we ask them to generalize the learning that goes on while they're in that job for everybody at that pay grade across their service. And we do these interviews, we ask a lot of questions, and we glean out of that what we think would be equivalent to workforce credit. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this paragraph that you're looking at, this person is a human resource specialist, and they were in this job in 2011. And as they were having this workplace learning, all of the stuff that we could capture, we try to put it out here. This is really a mini portfolio. So you can look at it and say, yeah, there are some things that are generalized across that career field at that level, and then determine a credit. The credit recommendations here on the bottom, it's quite a list. Basic business communication, office administration, some field experience, human resource experience. There's a credit recommendation made to a certain level, and that level is either lower division or upper division, 200 or 300. That's how we would put it in our vernacular in higher education. In about 2015, the American Council on Education started changing the way that they identified these credits because they wanted to more civilianize the language. And it was really pretty easy to do this because every member of an ACE evaluation team is a current professor in their subject matter area at a university. You have to be currently teaching what you are evaluating. So it makes it pretty simple to do that. We look at the training, we determine if there's a credit recommendation, and we move on. Some service members may have multiple careers. For example, in my time, I was enlisted and officer, but when I was an enlisted person, I was an information manager and I was a personnel specialist. So this was one of the jobs that I did here, personnel. I was part of the review for this one, but not in 2011. I started doing reviews in 2017. That third part of the JST covers other training. We're looking at CLEP exams, Excelsior. Excelsior's not doing this anymore, but this person had attended these types of things. There could be things like straighter line courses or Sophia courses, DSSTs. A lot of folks have gotten on board with recognizing DSSTs because they're open to civilians now. For a very long time, it was only the military community that could take them, but now they've opened it up even more. So those are going to be showing there the defense language classes that they may have attended. CLEP also has tests for those too. So those are going to fall in there. But in addition to that, there's other training that was accomplished in the military that doesn't show up as current for the jobs that they were in. Some of this training is recurring training. You can screen down through there. There's a professional development offsite training that went on. It wasn't evaluated by ACE. Let me explain that a little bit. The American Council on Education can only evaluate those areas that the military invites them in to evaluate. ACE can't say, hey, you know what, we're going to come down and evaluate this and determine if it has college equivalent credit. We can't do that. They can't do that. The military has to say, we have this training program and we think that it could be at a level of college learning. Come down and evaluate that. The Department of Defense pays that bill. So there are some trainings that are not awarded credit because ACE cannot can't by law evaluate them. And this professional development series offsite, that could be one of them. So this is where you as an educator may want to go, so tell me more about that professional development. What kind of training went on? Where did they focus? Was this team building? Could there be college equivalent learning there? Are there any artifacts such as a certificate or diploma that you might get? For example, back in the 90s, the military was very much into the Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They did a lot of that training, and it might show up as professional development on your JST like this. That was a 5-day, 8-hour day training in team development, in character development. There could potentially be college equivalent learning that we could recognize and use credit there. Another example is the second one down, staff and faculty development training. That course had been evaluated by the American Council on Education, and we know that because if you look under the course ID column, you're going to see an AR 1406-0175. That is an ACE number, but that means this service member attended either before it was evaluated or after the evaluation expired. Most ACE evaluations have a 3 to 5 year date stamp, and once it expires, because the course has changed, new material, different ways of doing business, then it goes into the expired file, but it might still show up in this other learning, which is something that you can dig further into. And you can see that for this service member, they actually had 3 different areas that could have possibly been awarded credit, but based on the learning and changes in what went on, maybe you need to dig a little deeper. So that's the part 4. All right. That's the JST. Now we're going to shift a little bit because the JST is a great document, but as you saw, it doesn't give you a lot of information. I want to show you something that gives you more information and can flesh this out a little bit more. And I'm not sure how many of you have worked with the ACE Military Guide, but as part of the ongoing expansion of military credit utilization in Indiana, Chi did a survey and asked how many of you are using this, and about 50% of the folks hadn't dug into the ACE military guide, the AMG. So I want to give you a chance to see what this looks like, and then we're going to have a period of discussion to see what you think about it. To get to the ACE military guide, you have to go to the ACE website. That's listed there at the top of this page. When you get to that website, you'll see the first panel where it talks about create an institutional account or start your search. Most of you are going to do just start your search, which will lead you to the second panel that you see up here with a search function. You can open it up to a bigger window that will let you be more granular in how you do your search. We'll see that in just a moment. But before we leave this page, the one thing I want to say is that create an institutional account is another training opportunity. We're going to look at it at the high level today, but there is a way that we can use that to help our institutions share what credit recommendations they've already accepted in their programs so that we can have consistency across the state. All right. More to follow on that. Please stay tuned. Steve St. John is going to do a lot of interesting stuff in the coming years to help grow that out. So there you go, Steve. Now,
Thanks, Dallas.
You're welcome. You know, this is where, all right, so just to bring you all up on. So Dr. Stacy Townsley is not with us today, but Steve and I had talked about me doing something just to torment her a little bit and saying, hey, Stacy, what do you think about this? And then crickets, but we're not going to do that because Dr. Townsley is awesome. And she is at a conference today and not with us, but she'll be watching this on video later. So the AMG, once you go into AMG and you do that search, you can use any kind of term to search on. If you want combat medics, you can put medic, you can put aviation, you can put a career field if you know it into this thing, and it will go out and do the search and bring back to you matching exhibits, right? You can then dig down deeper into this. I put in 68 whiskey because right now I'm doing some work on getting a program, a pilot program together where we might be able to bring 68 whiskeys in to the EMTs in hospitals and accelerate them to a RN program. Wisconsin's doing some amazing stuff in this area. More to follow on that too. So in that search, you can put in there 68 whiskey, combat medic, and you see that it brings up a list of things. You can identify if you want course evaluations that are current, because like I said, they can't have an expiration time to them. You can break this search further down by either course or occupation. If you look under that matching exhibits tab, the one that I have highlighted in the dark blue is occupation, but right below it is the course that they would take to attend that. I'm going to show you that course here in a few minutes, or a similar course. But for that combat medic, below the search function, you see the occupation exhibit. An exhibit is how ACE describes the information that they've collected on a certain area. It tells you when the person was in that career field, when the training was done, and what level. And then there are course recommendations. Right now, you can only see that this person was a 30 skill level and they've got some communication credit. But as I move to the next page, it balloons out a little bit more, because not only does it allow you to see the whole list of different types of training and credit recommendations that were done, but if you were online with the AMG right now, you could click on that underline and it will give you the learning outcomes. This is something you don't clearly see on the JST, but this is what the JST references to. By going out and looking at the learning outcomes, it will help your faculty and staff to say, maybe this is credit worthy at our level in what we're doing. Because the goal is, before an ACE evaluator will make a recommendation, they have to look at it and say, would this align with a college course that I am teaching or have taught recently in the way of learning outcomes? And for this particular spot, The communication learning, these are exactly what I would teach in my business communication class or in a communication class period. So we can then make that award of credit, 3 credit hours. On the right-hand side, you see a brief description. This is more of what you're going to see on the JST itself, but this exhibit gives you much more detail. But this is not based on the individual like the JST. This is based on the occupation or the course. So if a person were to attend this course, then you would know they would have attended, they would have earned that type of credit recommendation. I'm going to stop there for a second. I've given you guys a bunch of information. Do you have questions about this learning outcome for occupational side? And Steve, this is where I'm going to need your help and your team's help because I cannot see the chat. Is anybody making a statement or a question? Or if you just want to.
We do not currently have any questions, but participants, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask Dallas directly.
Sure, that's even better.
Dallas, this is Merle Yancey in Indianapolis, Ivy Tech.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm a retired Army guy, so I kind of understand the lingo there and a lot of the Air Force.
Right.
Based on their skill level, I know that they were required to attend some type of leadership development course, either a primary, basic, or advanced.
Yep.
Where do we see credit for those courses?
Aha. Same place. So that's that course on there. And guess what? I think you were reading my script because as we go into, well, it's not going to be this one. I'm going to go ahead 2 slides. ALC. For us in academia, advanced leader course, we're not sure what that is. Okay. We can make some assumptions, but this is where you see those credit recommendations showing up. You can put that course title in. It does show up on the JST under the military courses, part 1, not under part 2. But sometimes we're going to see in the part 2 that they'll talk about leading. I was on this one evaluation and it was with the Marines, and I was talking with a senior leader in the Marines for us in the military, an E8, and I asked him, so what do you do on a daily basis in your career field? What does someone do? We lead Marines. I'm like, okay, got it. But what does that mean? And he just kind of leaned forward in his chair as we were interviewing and talking about it. He said, we lead Marines. I said, yes, but there's so much more than that. And we started talking, and we could reveal that not only did they lead Marines, but there were communication skills that they had to have. That can show up in that part 2. The supervision that they learned at their advanced course and how they were applying it, the management skills. So that's how we can get to that. But right now, I want to go back just a second to this and finish off the learning outcome for occupational. All these things have been evaluated and determined to have some college equivalency. And as we do that, we can then continue to where we would look at a course itself. So going back to my combat medic person, not only did they have the other skills from the workplace learning, but they have skills from the classroom training. And those learning outcomes, again, are very clearly outlined here on this learning exhibit. It's a great document. It's a great website for you to be able to use, but it can be a little clunky to help others use it. So if you don't use it regularly, sometimes you forget how. So one of the things that I recommend that folks do as they use this AMG guide, go and on the right-hand side, you're going to see a little print function across from course exhibit. If you'll click on that print function, it will give you this document, a course exhibit that not only shares everything you just saw on the screen, but it puts those learning outcomes down at the bottom. So it's much easier that you can take and either email this to somebody or put it in a person's records if you want a paper copy, and it will delve into that particular training. Now, this is not associated directly with an individual. This is directed toward either a course that they may have taken or a career field that they were in. So keep that in mind. You're not going to see a name attached to this. This is that deep dive on what the course looks like. So here we have an infantry advanced leader course. This person went to infantry training, which in the Army, everybody starts as a soldier. That's where you start, and then you go to your career field. This person's MOS, military occupational specialty, is an 11 Bravo. And you'll hear folks that are associated with the military use terms like that: 11 Bravo, 68 Whiskey, a 42 Alpha. That is the first part of their career field identifier. The second part, the 30 that you see there, is the skill level. Remember, it goes from 10 up to 60. The higher you go, the more advanced the training. In this particular one, we see that there were class presentations that the students had to do. They had lectures and practical exercises. And we assessed that learning through rubrics, multiple choice exams, performance tests, papers, and presentations. All the information that I think will help us to make a determination on that credit recommendation. Now, could we go down to where this training is done and make that same evaluation on our own? Yes, we could. But if we had all 4,500 plus academic institutions in the US go do that, the military wouldn't have time to train to mission. That's why they have commissioned the American Council on Education to go do this for academia. They are professors, terminally degreed in their subject area, making those evaluations. So when you look at the JST and you look at the course exhibits, please know that these are your peers, our peers, who have done these evaluations and made these credit recommendations. They do have training that we start off with. You're partnered with someone who will be your mentor as you go through this. But as we continue to evaluate, you get better and better at it. You know how to do it. I would encourage you, if you are terminally degreed in your area of expertise, consider being part of an ACE team. You can go to the ACE website and fill out an application. We're always looking for new people to do evaluations. Now,
hey Dallas, we have a question from Laura.
Sure, go ahead, Laura.
If the occupation is listed on the JST, would all of the courses be listed as well to gain that occupation?
Yes. They keep in mind, though, that there's the initial training that they go through, and then they may have advanced training, and that will show up on the JST if it has been evaluated, and it will show up even if it does not have a credit recommendation. It will say, if we evaluate it as from ACE, it will say no credit awarded because it wasn't assessed or it was too military specific. All right. So yes, it will show up there. Thanks, Laura. That's a great question. So I want to move to another example of this exhibit. This one is the information technology person. We would call it information technology. They're in the IT world. They do all the IT stuff for the military. They go down. It was called Fort Gordon. The name has changed. I'm struggling getting all the new names figured out. Okay. But for a service member who goes into the IT field for all branches of the military, they all go to this same school down at Fort Gordon. And this school is 19 weeks long. It's their initial training. And these are the areas that they get trained in. The way that this is different from the way we do training, if you go into a college program and you take these courses, you're going to take them a couple of hours several times during the week, or maybe you do 3 hours one day a week. These folks are training on it every day. So they have as much as 6 to 8 hours a day doing this training. That's why they can accomplish so much over a 19-week period. And for the IT professional, 11 hours in the fundamentals, 11 credit hours in the fundamentals of IT. That's pretty significant. We can see if you're an IT person, there are a lot of things that match up with courses we do. And when we identify that, it helps to accelerate their degree completion. We don't want them to repeat things they've already done, nor do we want to waste their time in doing those things. But we need to do, as faculty members, a good evaluation to make sure that they're prepared to move to the next level. So sometimes we might look at this and go, all right, what does it mean to have 11 hours in IT related fundamentals? Well, again, you have the learning outcomes at the bottom. Sometimes you might want to talk with the student. That's another way of doing credit for prior learning. It's an oral interview. Maybe you'll have them do a demonstration. For example, in the automotive area, they do earn credit in doing different tasks like repairing brakes. And if you're in a program that has automotive technology, maybe you want them to demonstrate something. Okay, and that's totally acceptable. But we need to be consistent that this is the way we do it for anyone that wants to earn CPL credit. So we can do that. Now, there are a couple schools that have adopted this and have used it to award or recognize 17 credit hours in the IT area. Ivy Tech is looking at this really closely. Purdue Global has done some great stuff with it. There are other schools outside of Indiana that are doing a lot with this. So that's very important, but we need to be very clear in how we articulate that. Because there are a number of career fields. This is just a snapshot. There are about 30 some different career fields on here that may have either, as Laura pointed out, experiential learning in the workplace or military courses that match up. And really, the military is a microcosm of society. We do everything in the military typically has a correlation to the civilian sector. So we can make that match. There are some things in the military that don't. For example, we are not hanging bombs on 747s yet. So someone who is in the bomb loading area, their technical skills might not bear credit, but their leadership training may. So that's why we want to look at this as a whole picture. Additionally, it lines up really well with ONET. The Occupational Net is a civilian website where we can identify workplace skills that are needed, the skills, knowledge, and ability. But there's also a crosswalk in there for military training. And we can use this to help folks in the civilian sector to understand how their training might relate to military training and how we might be able to take the leadership training in the military and say, you may have that same thing in the civilian sector. Let's see how it matches up with ONAD, right? And this is all about sharing information. So we've covered a lot of time and I'm coming right up on time. Trying to make some extra time. There's some additional things I'd love for us to do in the future. Yes. Somebody have a question? Okay. There's a training module that we can do where we have some examples already built on what case studies can be used by the registrar, transfer services, academic advisors to help them, where we would align a JST, the AMG, and to a degree program. We could also expand on this institutions program and how you can use it. See, a lot of folks don't realize you can take that JST that a member gives you and scan it into the ACE military guide, and it will kick out any recommendations that you might have already aligned to military credit. Plus, it can tell you if someone else in the state or nationally has made a credit recommendation alignment. So this is some additional learning that can go on. If you want to know more about that, go out to this website. It's a 7-minute video on how the AMG and the institutions page can be used to enable better information sharing and networking. I'm done. I'm going to stop screen sharing. I feel like I've just run a half marathon. I hope you don't feel like you have just ran a half marathon. Questions and comments?
Hi, Dallas. This is
Hey,
Kelly Circle with Ivy Tech. I had a quick question, and I'm hoping that other people have the same question because I feel like this might be a really silly question. But anyway, when you typed in like 68 whiskey, you're a military guy, so you knew that.
Right.
How would a civilian person like get a list of all of those occupations or so that we make sure that we capture, everything?
So a lot of times you're not going to look for them just to be looking for them. You're going to have either a keyword or a phrase that you're looking for, but you're
Okay.
also maybe going to have a JST, which will have all those things.
It'll have that on there. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's how you can match that up. You can even have a course number. So there are any number of ways that you can do a search. For example, in the medical field, you might be wanting to find out about medics, combat medics. You can type in healthcare. You can type in any number of different things. It does get tricky because that IT one that I showed you in the Army, the language is just interesting. They call them signal. They're part of the signal corps. And Merle, I see you laughing down there, Merle. Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So signal, a civilian would never think to put signal in to find IT stuff. So this is where people like Laura Sprague, okay, and I think I saw her on here earlier.
Yep. And Laura Vest and the people
Laura,
with that military experience. Yeah. Okay.
Those folks, your veteran hub can help you. Your veteran service centers can help you with those things. So get to know them well. We're doing a training in October on setting up a veteran service hub through this same Lunch and Learn program. So come and join us there too. All right. Good question, though. Thank you.
Can I ask about this ONET online that basically has is it an automated military crosswalk that's been shared with other organizations? And could we adopt that as our military crosswalk?
So what it does is the Department of Labor built that out, and it's for you go in, you put your military job in there, and it will help you identify it. Now, you really can't use it as your military crosswalk because you don't have all those same things. But I would encourage you that as you do your military crosswalk, reference it to see what they're saying are civilian skills that are equivalent to what the military is doing, and it'll help you to better map that out. Here's how I used it when I was teaching a prior learning assessment course. I would have my military people take their JST Part 2, that occupational, run it through ONET to see the civilian language so they can make sure they were using the civilian language when they were writing their portfolio. All right. Because military people talk weird. All right. I don't care which branch you're in, you have your own language. Okay. And I would assume you had a little military time. And we have to learn the civilian language. Higher education talks weird. Okay. So we have to be able to translate those things. And that's what ONET will help you to do. Now, what school are you at with?
Ivy Tech. And I had a follow-on question about these evaluations expiring from a 3 to 5 year term when they the school goes through a update or they change the name or the MOS.
Yep.
So if we have somebody like me that served 23 years and a lot of the MOSs were deactivated, with the equipment, in the life cycle and stuff, we still want to give them credit for what they learned while they were doing that job, right?
Right. Okay.
So it doesn't forbid us from granting credit for that, even though it's not the current one, it's a previous one.
That's correct. So the AMG has all that ancient history. Okay. So you can collect that. And one thing to keep in mind, we're not giving them credit, we're recognizing their learning.
Right.
So that learning is still there. The one thing that Kelly loves this because I torment her about this often. she's gotten the treatment about we don't give credit, we recognize learning. But that learning is still out there. The one thing I would encourage you to do to maintain the integrity of your academic program is talk with the student, read through it, make sure that the learning they had then is still current enough that you could recognize that. Okay.
Yeah. The example would be, say, you know, I was in for 23 years, so I had 7 career changes.
Right. Right.
So when, let's say I was in a career in the 80s, and then now I'm a master trainer in the 2000s, you don't evaluate me on what I learned in 1980 because I'm training the people on the skill in 2000.
There you go. There you go. And that's how you would use it. Okay, so you bring up another point. We need to look around our institution and find those veterans who can help us translate or decipher all this stuff. You're a great resource, okay, for Ivy Tech, whatever campus you're on, and to share that information. And that master trainer hasn't been evaluated by ACE, but yet we can still evaluate that by saying, oh, in ONET, a civilian trainer would have these qualifications. You as a military member, is this what you did when you did training? Well, yes, it is. You learned ISD, you learned the cold cycle, you learned class management. The military has a course, the Air Force does, Principles of Instruction, that teaches you how to teach. The Army has the same thing. You have to go to the Master Instructor School. There are qualifications that you have to meet to get that award.
I mean, there's a whole other identifier at the end of that 30. If you did the MOS with 30, there's another letter that can be on there that says that you are an instructor, a drill sergeant, a recruiter. It's an additional skill identifier that means that you did that job during a part of your career.
Right. ACE does not include that, but you're right. All the branches have something like that to identify their instructors.
Now, I know how to find those codes. I can share the link to that. It's a DoD site. It's open to the civilian side. And it has every job in every service and the title of it.
Send that out. Share that information. I don't even have that. I would love to have that. Thank you. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments? I can see the chat now, so I'm going to jump out there too and look. Oh, there we go. Okay. Other questions? Just turn your mic on and ask away. I noticed Allegra was involved a little bit. Allegra, any comments? Anything you want to add? Allegra is a true champion in recognizing military credit. She's way awesome. Okay.
Thanks, Dallas. I think you did a great job.
Excellent. Well, good. Okay. 3 minutes. That's all we have left. Steve, I'm going to turn it back over to you. If any other questions come up, we can handle them.
Thank you, Dallas.
Oh, let me go back. I did have one last slide. Well, that's all right. We won't worry about it. If you need to get hold of me, talk to Steve. Steve and I communicate pretty regularly, and he's going to be talking more to you about the Collegiate Purple Star program in the future. If you haven't heard it before, it's a great program, and you're doing great stuff, Steve, in the way that you're facilitating military credit for prior learning in the state of Indiana.
Well, thank you, Dallas. For those of you who don't know, we do have an M-CPL task force kind of working right now, and this is actually a dual credit for both CPSI and for part of that task force responsibilities as far as education goes. So, and you'll be hearing more because that committee or that group is going to come up with some really cool things that we'll be able to share in the future, and with the goal of advancing M-CPL. So, and Dallas is part of that group along with our consultant TPMA. So they're leading and facilitating the phase 4 of our CPL initiative. But Dallas, thank you very much for your time and your presentation, as well as all 62 of you who attended our presentation today. Thank you very much for your time. If you like Dallas, he will be back on October 16th for our CPSI Lunch and Learn, and he will talk about the importance of the military hub. Next month in September on the 18th, We have a lunch and learn on the importance of developing a military success center. It's going to be a roundtable with 3 different institutions who are in different phases of the center developing or if they have a success center. So you're going to kind of hear some different ideas and what it took to get them there and what their process they're going through. So a lot of cool things coming up. We are at 1 o'clock. Everybody have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.